Hey everybody, this is Clint from the Keep Times. I'm here with Councilman Michael Janz from Ward
Papastew.
We interviewed him back when he was running for City Council, about 2 years ago, I believe.
Yeah, coming up on it.
Cool. So how are you today?
It's the coldest spring we are going to experience for the rest of our lives. It's already a heat wave, and it's only going to get hotter, so
Yeah.
Climate change, it's here.
Yeah. Yeah, and how would you say your first term in office has been so far?
It's something new every day. I like to say even the bad days are good days. Like even when things aren't going your way, it's still really exciting. It's a great chance to help people and to try and do your best and raise important issues. And it's such an honor. It's so cliche to say, but like every day I get to come to City Hall and enjoy this incredible space, trying to help people in different parts of our city. You never know what you might have a call ranging from coyotes to crematoriums to highways to like there's something different every day when you open your email, and the needs of the city are quite diverse, and it's every day is a new challenge, and you learn something every day. It's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. And would you say a larger part of your day is spent focused on specifically Papastew issues or just general city issues?
Yeah, it's a mix, because everything is so interconnected, right? So you might be dealing with waste management that affects everyone in the city, or you might be dealing with something like crime and social disorder that 5 years ago was mostly a downtown Chinatown issue, but now has been displaced more and more to out of downtown into the south side and elsewhere. So sometimes there's even little issues, like you look at, like, say, a development issue. You try and blow it up to the systemic level and say, okay, what does this mean for the whole city? What does this mean for the good of everyone? So.
Mm-hmm. And so, speaking of crime, how would you describe the Healthy Streets Operations Center?
So I would describe it as, well, by definition, it was an initiative that was set up between the police service and a couple of partners to look at addressing social disorder and crime in Chinatown following the two tragic murders we had last year.
When you say partners, you mean private partners?
No, like I believe it was Bent Arrow, which is an Indigenous nonprofit provider, and I think there was another one in the mix, as well as the City of Edmonton, like bylaw folks and stuff. So it was set up to create this basically targeted effort to address crime and social disorder in Chinatown. But that I think is the definition. For me, though, I didn't support it because the reason, like, crime is driven by crime and social disorder are driven by poverty and social determinants of health and all these other pieces. And I think every single dollar you're putting into enforcement is not a dollar that you're putting into prevention. So we know that, like, even Chief McPhee says, you can't police your way out of crime. You can't just keep throwing more police officers at the problem. The problem here is very clearly there's a lot of people with nowhere to go, nowhere to sleep, no food, addictions issues, mental health issues, no medicine, no doctor, no help. And they don't need a squad car. They need somewhere to sleep. They need somewhere to go. That's the solution to a lot of our social disorder. It's not actually police work. It's public health work, and that's why it's so frustrating when the provincial government is trying to paint all of these crime issues as anything but a problem of their own creation because of their mishandling of the whole public health and wellness file. Look at, ever since they closed safe consumption sites, you see people now using drugs all over the place. This wasn't how it was in 2018, 2017, when it's a relatively new thing. We never had this many homeless people and unhoused neighbors and other, we never had these problems even 5 years ago. It's
not at this
really
magnitude.
Exactly. And so why is that? And I think we have to look at closure of the safe consumption sites, cuts to people on income supports, cuts to people on AISH, the continued the provincial austerity and cruelty that they've inflicted on many of the most vulnerable in our society. It's right around us every day. So it's incredibly frustrating.
So back to that particular operation, are you basically, what you're trying to say is that the Healthy Streets Operations Center, whatever, is it effectively just an additional police station?
Functionally, yeah. It's a small police station. They would say well, no, they actually have a soft handoff, and they have other services there, and it's not just another detachment. But I mean, I get it. Like, everybody's frustrated. The Chinatown businesses and the residents, like, they want action. They want to see cops there. They want to see support there. I completely understand that. But the result is now people are being driven out of Chinatown into Alberta Avenue, into White Avenue, into other areas. And now the same thing is playing up over again, right? Now you have White Avenue and Ritchie and others asking for their own Healthy Streets Operations Center. And at some point, all we're doing is sweeping the mess from under the bed to under the rug to under the bed to under the rug. And it's not making a difference, right? And we have to get into the root causes.
And inevitably further bumping up the EPS budget further and further and further.
Yep, and we are already seeing that the inability. 51 people have died this year since January on the street. Like, there's a human cost to all of this. It's like, would police help? Would fire department help? Would paramedics help? Would all of these things help? Yes. But, like, what would help the most and what actually has the best return on investment? And I think when you talk to many of the frontline workers about what people actually need, often medical help, etc., those things are, you know, you can regulate and you can work with people sometimes a lot better through other partners rather than through just a police lens. And that's very frustrating. It's being treated like it's Richard Nixon in the 1980s again, and that's not like this whole war on crime, war on drugs, tough on crime. Like, it's not working. We have to be tough on the causes. We got to work. We got to get to the bottom of, well, why is that person homeless in the first place?
Yeah, and so regarding financial stuff too, is you've mentioned in your recent newsletter that the fact that the province has a massive surplus at the moment due to oil revenues and I'm sure a variety of other things, but and yet the city consistently has shortfalls in the budget, and this needs to be rectified in some way. What do you think, if the province was to allocate more of their surplus funds to the city, what do you think are the most urgent uses for that?
Right, immediate first answer that jumps to mind before you're done saying the question: housing. We're in need of 60,000 affordable housing units by the year 2030. We need more housing to stop people from falling into homelessness in the first place. The two most common ways that people become homeless: one, they're discharged from prison into homelessness with nowhere to go. Now, what do you think you would do if you just got out of jail with no money, nowhere to go, and you're now sleeping on the street? You'll wonder why. Yeah, you may as well, like, that person may as well just be put into the back of a squad car again, right? Like, good, now you have a criminal record and you're out on your own. Like, there's no hope there. Second other way, emergency. You're discharged from emergency, nowhere to go, and if you've had an amputation or you've had a wound and you need care and medicine, now how are you supposed to take care of yourself, right? So immediately housing, especially for bridge housing for those really tough situations, these are all critical steps. We have 52,000 children in poverty in Edmonton. If we can help their families have stability in housing, that's puts those kids on the right track forever. It means they're more likely to finish high school, to have gainful employment, to stay out of trouble themselves. Number one place I'd take that surplus provincially and put it into housing.
I think it's the most
critical,
effective preventative thing you can do.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, on that note, regarding property, actually, the Problem Property Initiative.
Yeah.
What is that?
Great question. So you've seen sometimes around your neighborhood there might be like an abandoned house. Like, there's no windows in it anymore. It's sort of there. It hasn't quite been demolished. Maybe they're trying to sell the property or not. We call that a problem property. Often what it is it can become a place where it might be a magnet for crime or disorder. It may also just be a fire hazard. We've had a number of fires in garages and abandoned properties. So what we've done is we've actually worked with the fire department to come up with a plan to tackle these properties. And so we'll go after the owner and say, hey, you got to clean it up, you got to board it up, you got to deal with it. If they won't do that, we'll actually have it demolished. We'll have it completely taken down. And as a result, that means we have fewer fires, fewer other incidents, fewer crime. It's actually very dangerous too. Like, you don't want somebody sleeping in there, especially if it's at risk of collapsing or whatever. So it's yet another small way that we can address crime and social disorder, and save the system a ton of money. Take the burden off police as well too, because they're not having to then go to calls at that location. So it's it's actually been really successful. Mm-hmm. Something Councillor Ashley Salvador, who's the councillor for Ward Métis just east of us, she brought in, and it's been it's been really successful so far. A fun statistic I learned in this job: 36% of Edmontonians are renters. 36%. That's
Yeah.
I thought that was really high, but it's actually quite a bit. And yet there's virtually no protection for renters. There's no, like, if you have a beef with your landlord,
Yeah.
or your landlord has a beef with you, or your landlord wants to raise your rent, there's no rent control. There's very little legal recourse to protect renters. And actually right now, as the weather's turned nicer, my office has been helping 4 different people with evictions who, like one person was got an eviction notice. The landlord was trying to raise the rent 50%. Another one 34%. Another one, the woman was blind, and the landlord was putting paper under her door,
no.
and it was just, so that's being taken to the Human Rights Tribunal.
No kidding.
Another one, the resident had a service dog. The landlord wanted to spray chemicals for bed bugs in the building. Well, the resident said, well, hold on, I've got a service dog. Like, can we just, what's in the chemicals? I just want to run it by the vet. The landlord said, you're non-compliant, you're evicted. So it's like, there's all these, like, I get some of the worst. Like, of course, there's good landlords out there, fine. I rent, you rent, like, it's fine. But, like, maybe I didn't mean to dox you there.
Oh,
but, like, yeah, but, like.
It's a safe assumption.
Yeah, but, yeah, the proverbial we rent. Yeah, so it's interesting in the city, like, do we do enough to protect renters? There are a vast majority of not just young people and seniors, but people throughout the city, and I don't know.
And speaking of which, I know I was actually discussing this with someone earlier today. The issue of rent control in Alberta is a total faux pas historically. Has that ever in recent years been a discussion municipally?
Oh yeah, actually in Calgary it's been really hot right now, because Calgary's rental market, like Edmonton, because I don't know whether with the slowdown, or maybe we had just a little more rental supply. So our rent, like we had like a 5 to 7% vacancy in Edmonton, but Calgary, it was their vacancy rent was around 0, and rent increases were quite high this year in Calgary, 20% in some cases. And so I know a lot of Calgarians were calling for rent control, and I actually saw a couple city councillors talking about calling for rent control, and I don't hear the provincial politicians talk about it this election, but I think we're going to hear more and more for it, because almost every province has some sort of a control, not rent control, but some sort of a...
Except us in Saskatchewan, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of the Wild West there for residents, and I don't think that's going to keep going in the future. People need some certainty.
Depending on who wins what election, right?
That is true. There may not be a future.
Yeah, we'll see. So I was kind of looking into, there was an affordable housing provider grant that is now available.
Yeah.
So... But in the kind of wording of the grant, or the description of it online at least, it specifies that the housing providers who would be eligible for the grants specifically, quote, would continue to pay at normal levels of property tax.
Yeah.
What would be the functional reason for, instead of just the city finding out who's eligible and just simply giving them a tax decrease, why could they not just do that instead of having to go through the bureaucracy of everyone applying individually?
You know, this is a debate we actually had at council for hours, I think on 2 or 3 occasions, about whether, like, it's the same outcome, right? Like, do we just not charge them property tax, or do we give them a grant instead? And part of it was, it comes down to the provincial law about, like, who's exempted from property taxes. Second, having the grant allows the city some semblance of a control over, like, who the affordable housing providers are. Like, are they doing true affordable housing? Are they doing, like, a quality program? We've had instances that come up that are quite controversial, where some of the housing providers are very, very faith-based and have a certain set of criteria that I would not describe as inclusive to everyone and not welcoming to everyone. So it becomes a question of, does that provider deserve public funding if they're running a pseudo-private operation?
Yeah.
Like, I would like to think when we give public money to, whether it's a public swimming pool, everyone can swim there, or a public affordable housing, everyone should be able to sleep there, regardless of your sexual orientation or gender identity. So
shouldn't be going to a landlord who says no gays, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Well, I believe that's all the questions I had for you for today. I guess the last question, overall, so far within your first 2 years, would you say that being a councilman has been more of a challenge than you expected, or is it a little bit easier than?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge of the last couple of years has honestly been the provincial government. Like, we came in and we were still dealing with the end of COVID, mask mandates, provincial government that did not want to work with Edmonton. Then Premier Kenney was going through this whole should I stay or should I go now, his leadership review, and then he kind of lost his review where he won it by 1% and resigned. And then there was the leadership race, and then Premier Smith got elected, and she didn't even take a meeting with Mayor Sohi for like 7 months. So like, it's just been really hard, even though, you know, we're a third of the province in terms of population. It's been really hard to have Edmonton's voice heard in a meaningful way from the province. And every single issue, like we talk about, has a tie to the provincial government. Policing, the Provincial Police Act. Housing, that's again regulated by the province, like with rentals. Water quality, utility bills, name anything, there's a tie to the provincial government. So when you have a provincial government that's not interested in working with the cities, Calgary, Edmonton, and they're more concerned about either their own war against vaccines or whatever it is, it just kind of grinds everyone to a halt, and that's really hard. So education's really struggled, healthcare's struggled, cities have struggled. I think all of us are just really happy that the election's finally here, and in 4 weeks we'll have an answer who the premier is, and then we can hopefully get on with the work that needs to be done. So it's that's been the hardest part of the 2 years. It's like, feels like we just lost time. Yeah. And that's been tough.
And without necessarily needing to be explicit about or anything, would you say that there's a somewhat of a consensus as to what direction the council might hope the election is headed?
Actually, well, that's a good question. There's division on the council for sure. Like, we have one councillor who ran for the UCP under Jason Kenney. We have others who are more, I would say, orange leaning, and sure. One that actually ran federally for the NDP. So, you know, you do have a diversity of opinion. I think all of us, regardless of who is elected premier, we want to make sure that Edmonton has a voice, that, you know, whether we're talking about housing or affordability or any of these big questions that we talked about today, that these issues will be heard here. We need to move forward together, and you can't do that when you have a government that's treats Edmonton like a punching bag, and that's really unfortunate. I mean, look at the arena deal, right? Like Edmontonians had to pay the taxes for their own arena, but then Calgary is being given like $1.2 billion. Like it's or like their arena is going to cost $1.2 billion, but they're getting some enormous provincial contribution, like conservatively $330 million. Like that's wild. That almost built our entire arena. So it's like, I don't know. It's really frustrating, but we'll do our best. We'll keep doing our thing. I'm still so excited about Edmonton. Like, did you know half of the city is younger than 38? Like, I am the middle. Like, I'm 38. Half of the city is younger than I am. And we're still, like, there's still so much energy here of people wanting to come here, raise a family here, move here. You look at all the cranes around. People are still building here. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't think of anywhere else I'd rather be.
Fair enough. Oilers fan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I'm just an anxious Oilers fan.
At the moment,
yes,
yeah. This is being recorded the day after the first game of the second round, which didn't go so great. But anyways, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
This has been Clint Hoekstra here for the Keep Times with Christina Hoekstra behind the camera. Peace.